I discovered my wife was having an affair after 28 years of marriage. Instead of confronting her and getting a divorce, I decided to meticulously plan to ruin her life. My wife had no idea that I knew about her ongoing affair, so the first thing I did was develop a strategy to make her life hell on earth. Simply confronting and divorcing her was far too simple. I needed to ruin her. My first move was to gather evidence of the affair, which I accomplished by using an app that enabled me to eavesdrop on her texts. I spied on her texts almost every night, screenshotting every discussion she had with her affair partner. They were chatting as if they were in a full-fledged relationship. Lovey-dovey, passionate, provocative images. The works. Around this time, I progressed to the making her life hell stage of my plan. I began acting quite cold towards her, which made her paranoid. She'd constantly ask whether I was okay, but I'd shrug her off. She would try to talk to me and persuade me to open up, but I ignored her. I could tell this had taken a toll on her mental health, but I was just getting started. I also started doing things out of the norm. I started going out at weird hours and getting home late from work. In her presence, I was on my phone far more than usual, and when she inquired, "What are you up to?" I simply replied, "Just stuff," and put my phone aside. I also changed my login information for everything so she couldn't access any of my stuff. Around this time, I told my best friend Ozzy about my plans, as well as my older sister and two other close friends, Joey and Nina. Keep an eye out for Nina. She will play a role later. It only took about a month of being chilly towards my wife for her to lose her mind. She began messaging and calling me more regularly, asking if I was going to be home, when I would be home, attempting to initiate things in the bedroom, and asking if I was okay on a daily basis. I could see the seed planted in her thoughts a month ago beginning to sprout, particularly in her interactions with her affair partner. Let us call him Dave. She is confiding in him about her doubts and confusion, which I am seeing again thanks to the app. She is telling him that I am becoming cold and distant. In the midst of these exchanges with Dave, she advises that they discontinue meeting at our house since she is unsure whether I will just show up. Dave asked her in that particular communication if she was concerned about me maybe cheating on her, which irritated her. I can't tell you how much fun and laughter I received from reading that exchange. My cheating wife fighting with her affair companion about whether or not her husband is cheating on her. Oh, how ironic. Now keep in mind that I am not going to hook up with anyone after I depart. I'm generally at Ozzy's, playing video games. We'll skip ahead another 4 months, 4 terrible months of keeping my lips shut, gathering proof and driving my wife insane by being cold and distant. I was enjoying the fact that she was on the verge of madness. I've been in this fake affair for 5 months and I haven't touched her in 5 months. No hugs, kisses, or attempts at intimacy. Not that she needed it. She was still sleeping with Dave, only at his house or in motels. Then, one day, everything fell apart. She called me at work and begged me to come home immediately because she had something vital to tell me. I genuinely believed she would admit her infidelity, but she didn't. Instead, when I went home, she asked whether I was unhappy with her. She mentioned the fact that I've been spending far too much time away from home. I no longer show her affection and our bedroom life has entirely died. She expressed concern that I was pushing her away before asking whether I was cheating on her. I can't even lie. I fell to the floor laughing hysterically. When I say hysterically, I mean the Joker laughing uncontrollably. On the surface, it appeared that I was laughing off the idea of being unfaithful, but in reality, I was laughing at the utter irony of what was unfolding in front of my eyes. I'm weeping up and beating on the floor in hysterics for about 2 minutes before I can control myself enough to respond. I sit up and look her in the eyes for the first time in months, shaking my head, but don't respond. I get up, brush myself off, kiss the top of her head and begin settling in for the night. I could hear her start crying as I walked away, but I didn't care. Later that night, as I was in my office, I decided that given the brevity of what had happened, I wanted to see what she was saying to him. So I launched the app, and sure enough, they're texting in real time. She informs Dave, "I know he is cheating on me. I asked him tonight and he just laughed in my face." He collapsed on the floor and laughed for about 5 minutes. He no longer cares how I feel. I'm not sure how or why, but he's gone. I know I have lost him. This is karma. I know it. The smile I had on my face while reading it must have resembled the Cheshire Cat. Her heart was breaking. Dave tried to console her, stating that if I cared enough about her, she wouldn't have had to come to him for something I wasn't providing her. However, the tone of her comments indicated that she was now questioning him. Throughout this, I was simultaneously carrying out another aspect of my payback strategy. This stage entailed organizing all of my financial issues. You know, I recently visited with a family attorney to begin the process of filing divorce papers. With the mountain of evidence I'd accumulated up to that point, the overwhelming amount of evidence demonstrating Sue's infidelity pretty much reinforced the fact that I could pin her to the wall in a divorce proceeding. My lawyer advised me to organize all of my finances in preparation for any asset division that may occur as a result. I went one step further, covertly withdrawing all of my money from our joint account and depositing it into my own account. As part of this step, I began looking at apartments. So it's been approximately a month since the incident in which I dropped to the floor and laughed, and I still haven't changed my behavior towards my wife. In fact, I've stepped it up, and if she wasn't psychotic before, she certainly is now. This is when my friend Nina comes into play. For reference, Nina and my wife have never been very close. I met Nina during my freshman year of high school, 2 years before I met my wife. Even back then, my wife saw Nina as a threat because she was my closest female friend. My wife has always shown an implied "I don't trust her" towards Nina. Anyway, one night Nina, Ozzy, Joey and I met at Joey's house for dinner and cocktails. Nina, being the evil brain that she is, devises an awful plan to provoke my wife. She suggested that we take some images similar to the ones I discovered of my wife and Dave months before and put them on Facebook. And that is exactly what we did. Sue didn't find out about it until 2 days later, when I'm sure a few friends read my updates and realized how uncomfortable I was with Nina. This totally screwed her mind because she still thought I was cheating. That night, she attempted to chastise me for being too handsy in the photos. I saw this as an excellent opportunity to land the opening jab for my knockout strike. I asked, "So what about the pictures of you and Dave from last year? He was fairly handsy in them, but did you notice how upset I was over it?" She resembled a deer in headlights. It was the first time I had stated the dude's name in all of this. The hamster wheel in her thoughts began to spin in real time as she attempted to interpret those photos and explain what she did. "He is that way with everyone. He's just a very friendly man. I see how it seems, but there is nothing there. I apologize if those pictures offended you. I will erase them." "No, it wasn't the pictures that hurt me. The year you've spent sleeping with the dude while lying to me about working additional hours and hanging out with pals has devastated me, but revenge is best served cold. Since that night, my wife has been particularly clinging and attentive to me. She'd try to initiate affection and closeness with me, and I'd turn her down at every opportunity. All the while, I'm recording everything she says to Dave. Mind you, by this stage, I had long since become numb. Any drive I had to save my marriage was gone. I checked out on the day I implemented the first phase of my strategy. She's telling him that I've become worse. She doesn't know what to do and she thinks I hate her. I do. Then comes the shocker. She claims she cannot see him anymore. The guilt is overwhelming for her, and she feels as if karma is strangling her. She cannot risk losing me. She claims to love Dave profoundly, but she is still in love with me. She has to salvage her marriage before losing me. No, my dear, that is several months too late. Dave loses it, saying nice things like, "He doesn't love you the way I love you," and, "You're making a mistake. You cannot just throw me aside like this." That text sequence was the last they'd have for a while. My wife is caught in limbo for the duration of November and December. She's trying to evaluate my mental state and is still unsure whether I'm being unfaithful. Meanwhile, Dave continues to blow up her phone on a daily basis, but she is not answering. I'd see her checking her phone frequently before hurriedly putting it away. Meanwhile, the financial part of the strategy was formally completed. Divorce paperwork were completed. I located a studio flat nearby and signed a 2-year lease. All of my money was in my own account. So we're now at Thanksgiving, 8 months after it all began. I determined I was prepared to hurl my haymaker. My 22-year-old son and his girlfriend were throwing a modest celebration for our close families, which included them, the girlfriend's parents, me, my wife, and our 17-year-old son. I initiated affection with my wife multiple times that evening in order to maintain the appearance that everything was fine between us. Kisses on the cheek, sweet little hugs, placing my arms around her shoulders from behind. These gestures did not go unnoticed by her, who reveled in them. Keep in mind that this was the first time I had touched this woman since kissing the top of her head the night she confronted me in October, which was roughly a month and a half ago. I was appalled by it, but I had no choice. I couldn't risk the plan, and being distant from her in front of my boys, my oldest girlfriend, and her parents would raise red flags. So my youngest decides to spend the night with his older brother, so my wife and I return home. On the way home, she thanks me for being so kind to her and says, "I don't know what you're going through, baby, but I'm here for you." I had to fight back from bursting out in insane laughter again and said, "I know, just need time." So for the first time since last year, we had sex that night. I reasoned, forget it. With what I was going to do, I might as well get some activity before deleting her from my life. After we finished, I just got up, showered and went to sleep in my office, much to her surprise. Even though I used a rubber for the first time in 2 decades, she was perplexed, but she didn't ask any questions. I awoke the next day and checked my handy spy software, and for the first time in weeks, she replied to Dave. He went full novella. He confessed his love for her, saying she was wasting her time attempting to rekindle a dormant flame in me, that she had been in prison with me for 28 years, and that she deserved to feel the love and compassion of a man who cherished her. Mind you, this guy is 27 years old, 5 years older than our oldest son. She reacted by expressing essentially the same thing she did when they last spoke. She loves him and enjoys their time together, but she can't lose me. I'm still the love of her life, but she'll always have a place in her heart for him, and they can still be friends if he wants, but their physical relationship has ended. He urged her to see him one final time that week and, you guessed it, she agreed. One more for the road, correct? Who am I to say anything? That is exactly what I did to her the night before. Of course, I put all of this to the archive I'd created. On December 4th, the final phase of Operation Shinobi Ghost began. The divorce papers were in hand, and a new residence was set up. Now I had to start carefully taking my belongings out of the house. But first I had to tell my boys. That Friday night, I summoned my oldest son, had them join me in my office, and lay everything out on the table. Not the specifics, but their mother had been cheating on me for a time, and I was planning to file for divorce soon. My 17-year-old was especially upset by this because he had just had his first taste of adultery. Yes, his first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months ago. Seeing his heart torn for the second time by the thought that his own mother was capable of doing this struck him hard. My oldest handled it much better and recommended taking his brother in to live with him until this was resolved, to which I agreed. We packed up some of his belongings and he asked if I would be okay. I answered him, "Yes, kid, I am going to be fine and so are you. We'll be fine, I promise." Then they were going. The hardest portion was now completed and it was time to arm the nuclear weapons. Over the next 2 weeks, day by day, my best friend Ozzy would assist me in getting some of my most sensitive belongings out of the house. I gave him a list of everything he needed to grab while my wife and I were at work, and I left him with the extra key. This was all something that my wife would not notice was absent unless you informed her. I'd also gotten a new phone and phone number and informed everyone who needed to know, including Ozzy, Joey, Nina, my boys, my mother, sister, mother-in-law, and my attorney. Meanwhile, I'm keeping up the pretense with my wife and she has no idea, trickling bits and pieces of affection to her only to get her off the trail while she remains in contact with Dave. They aren't as emotional as they were before, but there is still something going on. The fog is faint, but still present. All the while, I gather everything, and I mean everything, that I've archived since I began the plan. Call logs, texts, photos, emails, and anything else, and begin printing everything. I listed everything in chronological order, from the start of the affair until the last 2 weeks. I then placed each of the 14 binders detailing her infidelity in a gift-wrapped box and addressed them to various people. My mother, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Did I mention Dave works for the same company and there's an express rule against intercompany relationships because of the nature of what she does. Several of her friends, Dave, and Dave's parents. I took all of those to the post office and shipped them off on December 16th, with arrival predicted between December 22nd and 24th. Perfect. So we're currently on Christmas Eve. Sue arrives home around the regular time. I'm not sure if she had seen Dave. I had stopped tracking her on the app on the 18th. I assumed I'd gotten all the mileage I needed out of it. As usual, she showers, hangs out with me briefly, and attempts to show me love and affection, which I reciprocate, hoping to make the final blow as painful as possible. It was all upon me at last. A nuke I'd been preparing for the most of the year was ready to be unleashed. I awoke in the middle of the night, wrapped one of the 3 remaining binders, with the divorce papers taped to the inner cover, and placed it on my side of the bed with a Merry Christmas letter. Next to it I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed up the rest of my most important belongings, enough to fill 2 backpacks, and left the house where I had lived for the previous 23 years for good. That was 1 week ago, my friends. To my wife, I am completely off the grid. She's blocked on Facebook but hasn't blocked me for some reason, so I'm keeping an eye on the consequences. It's just wonderful. My presents have arrived at all of their destinations, and my soon-to-be ex-wife is being crucified. Her younger sister dressed her fully down. Both of her parents have denounced her. My mother totally destroyed her. She's been frantically searching to see if anyone knows where I am, but those who do aren't saying anything. She's urgently trying to reach me all over her feed, and I'm sure she knows I'm looking, but I'm not saying anything to her without my lawyer there. That will be the next time I exchange oxygen with her. She can't spin the story to make me look bad because I've exposed her to everyone she cares about. According to a common acquaintance who works in the same company as her, she and Dave will be placed on administrative leave as of tomorrow. Therefore she will most likely be unemployed in 2021. As for the final 2 binders, one has been sent over to my lawyer as my final piece of proof for my impending divorce, and the other has been placed in my storage unit to be destroyed in Joey's fire pit once the divorce is finalized. Update. I've spent the last 2 weeks watching my soon-to-be ex-wife utterly lose it on social media, and this past Wednesday, I met her in person for the first time since ghosting her at my lawyer's office. She and her attorney were present. She looked terrible, barely keeping it together. Her lawyer did make an offer for terms of reconciliation, but I turned it down practically as soon as she completed stating the facts of the request. Long story short, we agreed to a formal separation that would lead to an uncontested divorce. The only change is that I will pay her $653 in interim spousal assistance per month to cover the cost of utilities until she finds work again. Yes, she was fired up to a year after the finalization. So, following the meeting, my lawyer said some final remarks before saying he'd contact me to inform me on the status of the filing. Back out on the street, my soon-to-be ex-wife approaches me and says, "Can we talk?" I thought I'd offer her at least that. She kept her cool in the meeting, but outside, she let her emotions run wild, stating how sorry she was and how she never intended for things to get as far as it did. She claims she never intended to fall in love with Dave, but when she suspected I was cheating, she realized how horrible it was to betray her own spouse in this way. She asked if I could ever find it in my heart to forgive her, and if we might try to start over in a few years, since she can't picture her life without me. I urged her to start imagining it soon because this would be the last time I spoke to or saw her. I informed her that our 17-year-old is practically a man and capable of making his own decisions about his future. I told her that I gave her half of my life and all of my unconditional love, and she, in her own words, fell in love with another man. But I will never forgive her. That all of my affection for her was slowly drained over the months she confided in and declared her love to Dave rather than coming to me and telling me she was unhappy with how things were going between us. I told her that while I liked who she used to be, I despise who she is now, and that if I never see her again, it will be too soon. I closed by telling her that I had no regrets about being her spouse for 28 years. I hated that after 28 years, she decided the easy way out was the better option, and that for 23 years, I thought she was mine, but it turned out to be my turn. Later that night, her father called and apologized, congratulated me for always being a decent man to his daughter, and told me he was embarrassed of her and that he raised her better than she had. Following the call, I went to Facebook and updated my relationship status as divorced. Life is pretty bizarre right now, but at least Nina and I are sleeping together, which is a good